about 45 million pounds of chips in a quarter. That equates to about 200 million pounds of potatoes, which is quite a few. What's interesting with M&T is they're a small town bank, and as we've grown, they've also grown with us. They've got the resources that you would need in order to go big, but they also have that friendly local community feel so that it makes it seem easier than it probably is.
Hello, and welcome to Candidates Upfront. This program allows voters to get the information they need from candidates in the May 18th municipal primary election. It is a joint project of the League of Women Voters of Pennsylvania and the Berks Community Television. Both are nonpartisan organizations that never support or oppose political parties nor candidates. Today, our featured race is Judge of the Court of Common Pleas. The Court of Common Pleas hears trials of major criminal and civil matters. It hears matters involving children and families, and it hears appeals from the minor courts. The current salary is $186,665, and judges serve a 10-year term. Now, voters in the Republican Party will choose 2 of 5 candidates. The same for Democrats. They will choose 2 of 5 candidates. And the 5 candidates are, in alphabetical order, Tina Boyd, Osmer Deming, James Gavin, Kurt Geishauser, and Catherine Nadaroff. All will be asked the same questions in the same order with the same general time limits. Each candidate's views are their own, and not necessarily those of BCTV or the League of Women Voters. Today, our candidate is Osmer Deming. Welcome.
Thank you.
Tell us, please, why have you decided to run for judge, and what education and background do you bring to this position?
Well, first, I'd like to thank BCTV and the League of Women Voters for giving me this opportunity to express my views and to inform the public of who I am and what I'm about. In terms of why I decided to run for judge, I've had many friends suggest that I would be a good fit because they know I have a strong work ethic. They know I have a breadth of experience, both inside the courtroom and outside the courtroom. Before going to law school, I was a public school teacher. After law school, I graduated from Dickinson School of Law in 2000. I went to work for Judge Jeffrey Schmale in the Court of Common Pleas. And after working for Judge Schmale, I worked in civil litigation and municipal law at a Wyomissing firm, Leiswitz Heller, Abramowitz Phillips. And then in March of 2008, I opened my practice. I've done virtually every area of the law, civil litigation, criminal trials, family law, divorces, support, probate, Chapter 7 bankruptcies. I can't think of one area of the law that I haven't done at one point or another. And also, as many people know, I was the managing director for the City of Reading for a short period of time. So I think my experience inside and outside the courtroom makes me well qualified for this position.
Is there a person or a moment in your life that influenced you to run for judge?
Well, again, when I graduated law school, my first real legal job was working for Judge Jeffrey Schmale. And I think he was probably the biggest influence on my life in deciding to run for that job because I saw what a good judge was. And I was his law clerk from March 2001 to September 2005. And I think every law clerk says that their judge is the best. But I sincerely mean it in terms of I saw there are very few people that I can say I agree with 90% of the time or more. And Judge Schmale was on that list. And I saw what a good judge was in terms of the right courtroom demeanor, being fair to everybody, being patient, treating everyone with courtesy and respect. These are the qualities that I learned from Judge Schmale, and these are the qualities that I'm going to bring to the bench as well.
Tell us who your favorite Supreme Court justice is and why. Can be anyone past or present.
I would say my favorite Supreme Court Justice of the United States was Oliver Wendell Holmes for a variety of reasons. Number one, he was a Civil War veteran fighting for the Union. Number two, Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes had a belief that you should state what the law is, not what it should be. He was a big believer in the First Amendment and freedom of expression, and I think he brought a sense of both life experience and a sense of knowledge of the law to the Supreme Court of the United States that we haven't seen since.
If you were talking to someone with no legal or political background, how would you explain the difference between a conservative judge and a liberal judge?
Well, I think the view that most Americans have is that a conservative judge is the one who says, I'm going to interpret the law the way that it should be, not the way that it is. And liberal judges tend to be perhaps a little more activist. I think that's how I would explain it to a layperson. And I believe in again, my judicial philosophy is saying what the law is, not what should be. If there's a defect in the law, I believe that should be resolved in Harrisburg. But that doesn't mean you don't bring your compassion and your common sense with you to the bench. And to the extent that makes you a liberal judge, well, so be it. I frankly think it makes you a fair judge, bringing both that life experience and saying what the law is and not what it should be.
And under what circumstances would you recuse yourself from a case?
Well, number one, if you actually represented either of the parties in a case, in the same case, you obviously should not have zero involvement with it. If you're sitting in a criminal trial and you discover that you represented one of the parties previously, you should not sit as a judge in that case. So that's one instance in which I'd recuse myself. The other instance is if I had any financial or other interest in the outcome. That would be another instance in which I would recuse myself as judge.
Let's say you're explaining to citizens who are called for jury duty, and you want to explain to them what the duties are that they have and why there's a need for them to serve.
All right, our jury system is so important to the proper running of our court system. I would explain to jurors that their service is just as important as their service in the military. Without the jurors coming forward and getting up early in the morning on a Monday or Tuesday and showing up and being sworn to follow the instructions of the law and the judge, our system would crumble. And I would say to them that if they were accused of a crime or if they had a dispute in which they wanted 12 members of the community to show up, that they would want these people to take it seriously and to be there. And I think that's what jurors who take this civic duty seriously do. I think they're an integral part of the system. And I would congratulate them for serving on juries, just as I would thank a United States military veteran.
What is the appropriate role for a common pleas judge in an end-of-life dispute brought to court by family members?
All right. Well, first, in end-of-life disputes, I think we have to first look at what the wishes of the person who is in that end-of-life situation is. If they had a medical power of attorney, what's called a living will, we have to look to that first. If we don't know, if there is no living will, then I believe we have to have a meeting of the minds when it comes to what the medical profession is saying and what the wishes of the family are and what's best for society. I think that's the best way of dealing with end-of-life decision disputes.
In sentencing a convicted criminal, what factors should be considered? When is an alternative to jail appropriate?
Well, Pennsylvania has sentencing guidelines in criminal cases, and judges are mandated by law to regard those sentencing guidelines when sentencing someone who is either been found guilty or has pleaded guilty in a case. So we have to look at the sentencing guidelines first, but that doesn't mean that we stop there. I really believe that, as you mentioned, alternatives to jail, I believe that we have to lock up people who are violent and people who commit sex offenses. Those are people that should meet the priority of lengthy jail times first. And then as we go down the line to crimes that are not do not have a clear victim, I think those are where we need to look at alternatives to jail time.
Please give us your views on plea bargaining.
Well, unfortunately, plea bargaining is a necessary evil of the system. Without plea bargains, we don't have the resources in the court of common pleas to have for every for every person who's charged with a crime to have a jury trial. And so plea bargaining is a necessary way of disposing of cases where someone actually committed the crime. They want to accept an offer from the district attorney, and they want to accept that offer and plead guilty as opposed to going to trial where they may face more punishment. So without plea bargaining, our criminal justice system would be overburdened. But that doesn't mean that judges are bound to follow plea bargains every time, or that they must always follow the plea bargain. There are times and there are instances where a judge can and should reject a plea bargain.
If you are elected, in what area of law would you prefer to serve? Criminal, civil, family, one of the special courts? Tell us why.
I don't have a preference. I will go wherever the president judge of Berks County tells me to go. I believe I do have a large background in criminal law, both working for Judge Schmale, also as working for post-conviction counsel for the county of Berks since 2008, where I processed over 300 cases. So I do have a background in criminal, but I also have a background doing civil, and I'd have no problem doing that if I were called upon to do that. And in family, again, I've done family law, I've done divorces, I've done support, I've done a custody trial. Wherever I'm called, that's where I will go.
Why is the position of judge so important that people should come out to vote?
Well, because the judge is the one who often decides the case. The judge is the one who decides what jail term will be for someone who's committed a crime. The judge is the one who's going to decide in a family law dispute who gets to spend the weekends with mom or dad. The judge is the one who's going to decide who's right in a breach of contract case or a personal injury case where maybe someone slipped and fell. So it's so important that voters take it seriously because the judges have a huge impact on your lives. And so I urge voters to take both the primary and the general election seriously.
As a member of the judiciary, what can you do, either on or off the bench, to ensure that all Pennsylvanians have equal access to justice?
Well, I believe, number one, that we need to make sure that if a individual has problems with the English language, that they're provided with appropriate interpretation services. That's number one. Number two, if someone has a physical barrier, a physical challenge, I believe that we need to make sure that the courthouse is open to everyone, irrespective of whatever physical challenges they face. And in terms of monetary issues, I believe that everyone deserves the same justice, irrespective of their economic position in life, irrespective of what their last name is, irrespective of what neighborhood they grew up in. I don't believe in punishing people because they have money. I don't believe in punishing people because they don't. I believe everyone should be treated the same, and that's what I'm going to do when elected.
Pennsylvania is one of 2 states that does not provide any state funding for the Public Defender's Office. Public defenders here are funded by county taxes, resulting in disparity from one judicial district to another. How would you address this issue so all defendants have access to competent lawyers to protect their legal rights before the court?
Well, when I was a law clerk, one of the things I did notice was now retired Judge Albert Stallone addressed this by putting forth a memo, trying to make sure that all judges all lawyers are paid at the same scale, irrespective of whether they're in the district attorney's office or in the public defender's office, or whether they're a law clerk. And I believe that that's the way that you address it. You try to make sure that all lawyers are compensated based on their experience walking into the courtroom. I think if the DA has the same resources as the public defender's office, then I think things are fair, and I think that's one way of addressing it.
There are alternatives to incarceration that not only cost less, but also often result in less recidivism. What is your view on alternatives to incarceration for nonviolent offenders?
Yeah, I'm absolutely in favor of alternatives to incarceration for nonviolent offenders. I mean, look, folks, we've tried the approach in this country of giving everyone the maximum sentence, of having huge mandatory minimums, of locking people up and throwing away the key, and it's been an utter disaster in this country. United States leads the pack in industrialized countries in locking up more people than anyone else. And has it made us any safer? Are we any safer than countries in France or Italy or Australia, where they lock up people and have alternatives to incarceration? And the answer is no. We are no more safe than those countries. So to answer your question, absolutely, we need to look at alternatives to incarceration for nonviolent offenders, and we ought to start with treatment for people who have addiction issues instead of just locking them up, and also people with mental health issues.
How would you deal with difficult cases, especially those that are highly publicized?
Well, it's a balancing act. You have to make sure that the public and the press, we have freedom of the press, and that the public has access to know what's going on. You have to balance that with the rights of the parties. So I would say that the way that I've seen this done in the federal system, is that judges will put restrictions on what lawyers can say out in the public if they are trying to influence a potential jury or trying to try their case in the press. So the way that you do it is by putting appropriate restrictions when necessary on parties so that they don't abuse the ability to use the press to try to sway a decision that's not in line with the law or with the facts.
Major crime cases are a great concern to voters here in Berks. Can judges do anything to reduce crime and reduce repeat offenses?
Well, sure. I think judges need to decide all cases, again, by looking first at the sentencing guidelines and then bringing their life experience and common sense to the table. Certain things, I believe, need to be punished more than others. Again, if someone commits a sex offense or commits a violent crime, we address recidivism by making sure those people are appropriately punished. Other people who commit nonviolent offenses because of addiction issues or mental health issues, we address recidivism as a judge by making sure that they get the appropriate treatment, and we court order it. We give these people the choice. Please get your treatment. Please address your addiction issues. And if you don't, then we have this other sanction available. So I think that's how we address recidivism.
Juveniles may face mandatory criminal charges. How can we protect our schools and our communities and at the same time not irrevocably hurt the juvenile who made a mistake?
Well, again, when a juvenile commits, I believe in second chances. I believe that the juvenile mind is not as fully developed. Someone who is 13 years old and makes a bad choice is not at the same level as someone who makes a bad choice at age 25 that may not be reformable. But if someone irrespective of their age, commits a violent offense, I think we have to protect the public from that individual and isolate that person one way or another and not put them in a position where they're going to hurt others. But we also have to make sure that juveniles get treatment and that they're in programs that reform them so that they don't commit these types of offenses again.
Berks County has established special courts to address crimes connected to illness, drug court, veterans court. Do you support alternatives to sentencing established by these courts? And do you think there are any additional special courts that should be set up? And if so, for what groups?
I absolutely believe that we need to have these the veterans courts and the drug courts. I've represented clients before them before, and I do think that they are an important and a good part of our justice system. In terms of what else we need to do, I think we probably, and haven't really given this a lot of thought, but I like the question because I think what I've seen is that our jails and our prisons are filled with people with mental health issues, and I don't know that we really have enough mental health courts or enough direction in treatment of people who have mental health issues. I think that's something that we don't do enough in our courtroom or in society. And if given the opportunity as a judge, I would like to definitely see some change in that area.
Medical marijuana is lawful in Pennsylvania, and yet active ingredients in marijuana remain a federally controlled substance. Do you support measures to make federal law more consistent with state laws? And describe your approach to this inconsistency in the law.
Well, that's tough. As a judge, you are sworn to follow the law, whether it's state law or federal law. You can, as a common pleas judge, you're a state employee, so you can't say I'm not going to follow the law. On the other hand, I think this question is probably more appropriately addressed to prosecutors because judges only decide cases that come before them. So if a prosecutor decides that he or she is going to go out and punish people with medical marijuana, then the judge is duty bound to follow the law. But again, I think if we're careful with our prosecutorial choices, so if someone is in a bad state, maybe they're suffering from cancer or some other type of illness, and they need medical marijuana in order to survive and do better, then I support that concept for sure.
In Pennsylvania, judges run as a member of a political party. What is the significance of party affiliation for judgeships?
To be honest, I don't believe that judges should run on political parties. I believe that this should be a nonpartisan event. I don't think whether you're Republican or Democrat, a Green, Independent, should have any bearing on this. When you're a judge, you should be running on making sure that you have the experience, the integrity, the compassion, that you have the qualities of a good judge. What political party you are should have absolutely no relevance for that. And if you look at our bench now, it bears that out. We have judges who were when they ran registered Democrats and who were when they ran registered Republicans. And when you're before them, you don't know the difference. You just want the judge to decide the case fairly. And so for that reason, I believe political parties should not be part of the process.
And what are your thoughts on the merit selection of judges?
Well, I'll tell you. I like, in theory, the merit system, but I also believe in the role of the people, the role of the democratic process of electing our judges. I believe if we could do a hybrid system, where, like in workers' comp, the workers' comp judges, it's all merit-based. And I think there's some really good workers' comp judges out there. So I think if we could have a mix in the future of a merit selection and also involving the voters, I think we would probably get higher quality judges.
And past judicial campaigns here in Berks County have been noted for high spending. Please explain your views on money in judicial politics.
I think it's unfortunate that money is part of the process for running for judge. It shouldn't be. If you are qualified, if you are experienced, if you have the integrity to run for judge, you shouldn't have to buy the election. It should be decided on your qualities, not on money. So to the extent that we can eliminate money from the process, we absolutely should. And we need to look at measures in the future of doing that. And so far, I'm basically self-funded. No one's given me anything other than one attorney gave me $50 for gas money. And I believe that self-funding as much as possible, but putting a cap and not being, grotesque and vulgar in the amount that you spend should be a consideration.
Please tell us about any volunteer or community work you're involved in.
I'm presently on the board of the WCR Center for the Arts. I've been an active member of the Reading Public Library Board. I was on the Reading Public Library Board for 4 years. I was on a committee for Goodwill Industries. So those are some of the things that, I also forgot to mention probably one of the most important things, which is I've been a very active member of the Bar Association throughout the years, ever since when I was licensed to practice back in 2000.
Thank you. And you have 2 minutes to make a closing statement.
I would just like to again, thanks Berks BCTV and Berks League of Women Voters for giving me this opportunity to tell the public who I am and what I'm about. I think you are going to have to make I'd say to the public, a tough choice during the primary. I'd like to tell the voters that I have both the experience and the integrity for this office. And a lot of lawyers support my running for this office because they also know that I have a very strong work ethic. I'm the guy that will stay late at night looking up the law when I don't know it, and no one has ever accused me of going to court and being unprepared. We need judges that have a work ethic. We need judges that bring common sense and compassion to the bench. We need judges who have a broad experience and a broad knowledge of the law. I have those qualities, and I really believe that I would be a great addition to the bench, and I would really love the opportunity to serve the public.
Thank you. Thank you, and we've been talking to Osmer Deming, who is running for judge of the Court of Common Pleas, and he's told us about his qualifications and his philosophy. We are dealing, coming May 18th, with a municipal primary election. Now, a primary election is when members of the Democratic and Republican Party select their candidates for the fall. So party members will vote statewide for local judges, the county coroner, the prothonotary, the treasurer, school directors, city, township, and borough officials. But all voters, not just those in the main parties, all voters, every registered voter, is encouraged to vote on the constitutional amendments to our Pennsylvania Constitution. They will be on the ballot this year, and we hope that you will know how important it is to vote on our Constitution. Now, you must be registered by May 3rd to vote in the upcoming election. If you want to check your registration or request a mail-in ballot, go to votespa.com. That's VOTESPA.com. And if you want information on the other races on your ballot, you can go to vote411.org. That's vote411.org. And please continue to watch BCTV. We'll have more candidate interviews. And our League of Women Voters Presents, which is on the second Tuesday of April at 8 o'clock, will have information on those ballot questions, the constitutional amendments, so you'll want to be sure to turn in then. For the League of Women Voters, I'm Judith Cranis. Good day.
We make about 45 million pounds of chips in a quarter. That equates to about 200 million pounds of potatoes, which is quite a few. What's interesting with M&T is they're a small town bank, and as we've grown, they've also grown with us. They've got the resources that you would need in order to go big, but they also have that friendly local community feel so that it makes it seem easier than it probably is.